As I read aloud, your job is to annotate each question. Time allotted, 45 minutes for part 1 and 2 combined. Part 1 directions. Each of the questions or incomplete statements below is followed by 4 suggested answers or completions. Select the one that is the best in each case and then fill in the corresponding circle on the answer sheet. Number 1. Students examined the smaller structures of living things and non-living things. Which of the following observations provides evidence that the smaller part of living things and the non-living things are cells? Smaller parts of living things, A, are tightly packed together with almost no space between them. B, carry out functions that sustain life, such as respiration. C, are uniform in size and structure. D, cannot be seen with the unaided eye, but require a microscope. Number 2, where do cells fall in the level of organization of living things? A, cells are made up of smaller living things called organelles. B, for something to be alive, it must be made of many cells. C, cells are the smallest unit that can be considered alive. D, only groups of cells that function together are actually alive. Number 3, the overall shape of a plant cell is most directly related to which of its parts? A, mitochondria. B, cell membrane. C, chloroplast. D, cell wall. Number 4, a group of students used classroom materials to build a model of cellular structures. Which statement describes the best way materials were used to model mitochondria? A beaker with water to model how the cell gets its shape. B, a battery with wires to model energy for cellular processes. C, a cloth bag to model how the cell lets materials into and out of it. D, a computer mouse to model how the cell controls cellular processes. Number 5, yeast is used to bake bread and rolls. When dry, yeast looks like a light brown powder. When mixed with water and sugar, yeast grows and reproduces, producing gases that make dough rise. A student is given a beaker containing a sample of dry yeast. Which investigation will produce data to best support the claim that yeast is a living thing? A, keep the dry yeast in sunlight for several days and see if more yeast appears. B, combine dry yeast with water and measure the heat released from the mixture. C, mix dry yeast with water and sugar and measure the mixture's change in volume. D, mix dry yeast with water and sugar and use a microscope to observe if cells are visible. Number 6, a teacher shared this model with her class. Movement of oxygen molecules across a cell membrane. High concentration, low concentration, cell membrane, oxygen molecules. Which statement is best explained by the model? A, how the cell membrane controls what enters and exits the cell. B, how the cell membrane protects the cell from harmful chemicals. C, how oxygen is important for body cells to survive and reproduce. D, how oxygen concentration is always different inside and outside of cells. Part 2 directions. Questions 7 to 9 are free response questions that require about 10 minutes each to answer. Question 7 is worth 3 points. Question 8 is worth 3 points. And question 9 is worth 4 points. Read each question carefully and completely. Write your response in the space provided for each question. Number 7. James is given 4 liquid samples. One sample contains living things, but the other 3 do not. Each sample appears cloudy, but James cannot see with his unaided eyes what the material is in each sample. He is asked to identify each sample as containing either living or non-living things by looking at the structure of the material in each sample. A, describe an investigation that would help James see the structure of the material in each sample and identify which sample contains living things. B, identify the structural evidence James needs in order to identify the sample that contains living things. C, explain why the evidence identified in Part B supports identifying the samples as containing living things. Number 8. Mark is making a model of a living plant cell. The following objects are available to Mark for his model. A, cloth wire. A, wire cage. A, solar panel. A, battery with wires. A, zippered sandwich bag. Mark wants to represent the function of different plant cell parts by using objects that have functions similar to the cell parts. A, identify 3 objects Mark can use in his model that each represent a different part of the cell. B, explain how the function of each object identified in Part A is similar to the function of the cell part it can represent in Mark's model. Number 9. Elodea is a type of aquatic life. Under the microscope, a sample of Elodea looks like the image below. Paramecia is another type of aquatic life. Under the microscope, the paramecium looks like the image below. 2 scholars were having a discussion about these 2 forms of life. One said, all cells are living things. Every cell in an Elodea plant is an organism, just like the one-celled paramecium we looked at. The second scholar said, well, you're partly right. I agree that all cells are living things, but an Elodea cell cannot be called an organism. The Elodea cells can't live on their own like a paramecium can. Which scholar is correct? Explain your thinking.